We're going to try and observe the times mentioned in the program. When I went to bed last night, I decided to have one last peek at the weather report, and it's the worst weather report all year. And somebody asked me about a week ago, what do you think about the attendance for Milts? And I said, oh, the room's going to be jammed unless there's a blizzard. And the room is jammed, and there is a blizzard. Just a few people to thank before we get underway. Rich Herman and Elizabeth Rodman have been extremely helpful in planning this program. They are immensely helpful administrative staff here, and it's just nice to have the opportunity to thank them in front of so many people. We came up with this idea of donating $100 for 100 years, and it's been one of our most successful fundraising drives. And I'm just going to ask Rich to stand up for a moment and tell you how successful it has been, if I may.
Well, there are a lot of checks around. My guess is Milk, you bought up $10,000 worth of furniture for the club. It's really good work.
And thanks to all of you, the donors. And there's an envelope up here to put other envelopes in. Several people have brought their checks to this meeting. And I'm going to take the fundraising hat off in a moment. I decided to do this first to get it out of the way, but of course you can continue donating beyond 11:30 if you're so inclined after this meeting.
You could turn in your $101 check for next year.
Working toward next year. We celebrate Milt's birthday at a meeting in January every year for just a few minutes, and each year I say to him, we'll do this until you're 100, but maybe we'll go on. That's up to you. One other set of people to thank are those who were responsible for this video that's behind us that we're going to see that was recorded in 2007. Donna Brindle, a graduate of our institute, I don't know if she's here. She was going to, she may not be here yet. Her husband, Peter Alescu, who did the videotaping, and Stefan Zicht, who's the interviewer. I happen to be an expert on Milt Zaphiropoulos' life. I've watched this 2-hour video twice now. He's extremely articulate in this video, and we're going to begin by me asking him to talk a little bit about his childhood, and then we'll switch to the video for his years at the White Institute, where he was in the 2nd class. Ready? You ready for your star turn here? Okay. We're going to have to ask you to get the microphone as close to your mouth as you can. And we'll start by 2 questions about your childhood. I know you were raised in Alexandria, Egypt, and Port Said, Egypt, but in listening to this 2-hour video, you never mentioned actually living in Greece. So I wonder, first of all, did you ever live in Greece? Your name so speaks Greece, and then tell us about your early days in Egypt.
Well, I never lived in Greece. Used to go there summers, estivation or whatever it is. I was born long ago and far away. And I don't know, life must be a many splendid thing, because here I am talking to you all. It's an amazing turnout. You're brave people. I don't know how much to thank you. I appreciate it. And I think that I was expecting mostly to hear from you. And suddenly at the last minute, Captain Tone, our esteemed Director of Clinical Services, says to me, how about saying something about Chuck? True enough. I was born in Alexandria, Egypt. And I think that the first few days of my life were spent there. I had a faint notion that my father was a sea captain, was away when I was born, but that's not true. I was actually present. He was actually present, but I think that he sort of left soon enough after I was born. It took us a few months to find out that his ship had been torpedoed. This was World War I. And so I was taken care of by my mother, who was very young, and I thought that she must be thinking of me as a present to my father. And
I'm going to move this table closer to you.
Okay, to be solicitously taken care of. My next memories are sheets covered with shards from windows, because there were two German submarines who shelled the place, the Goeben and the Breslau. And
Those are the names of the ships?
mm,
Amazing.
and after my father came back from the seas, he had given some directions to my mother how to take us down to Suez, some such thing. And this is indeed what happened. The next thing was that we were in Port Said, my father, as I said, was a sea captain. His father before him had been a sea captain, and he became one of the first captain pilots in the Suez Canal, because he was present to help the Lesseps open the canal. I went to Greek schools in Port Said. I think the fourth grade, because I was schooled at home before that. And I stayed with that particular school until I think it was the second class of the Greek gymnasium. King Fuad of Egypt had endowed prizes for the good students, because at Athens we be taught Arabic instead of another foreign language. So instead of being taught or continuing to be taught in French, I was given Arabic. It seems that he was a pretty good student because I won one of those prizes. I think I was doing better in Port Said than I was doing in Alexandria because there were some crackerjack people, in Alexandria, in the Greek gymnasium. I finished there, and at the tender age of 15 and a half, I was sent to Paris, naughty Paris. But I was supposed to really carry myself in the proper way, and I was going to endeavor to do this. It was later that I thought, my God, they must have been pretty confident people, my parents, allowed me to do that. But that's how it were things are.
Did you start at university at 15?
At 15, yes. So, you know, I think that somebody wants to ask me how did they get into medicine. I never asked for going into medicine. Really the funny thing about this is that I thought that I wanted to do history or literature. And my parents said to me, "You're going to starve if you do that." So in conjunction, in consultation with the man who was in charge of the Suez Canal in Port Said, my mother and this man, Monsieur Minois, decided that I was going to be a second Louis Pasteur. And so this is how they shipped me, you know, into medicine. I had to have 1 year of physics and natural sciences and chemistry, and then started a 5 years of medical school. At some point I told you the idea of becoming a hematologist, don't ask me why, but this is how things are. And I think that, well, let me see. At the end of my years there, I decided to take 2 years and go to the Sorbonne and essentially in literature. You have to have 4 certificates. One was in ancient Greek, Byzantine. The other one was in, I'm forgetting now.
You're allowed.
Moral comparative literature. And anyway, it was very interesting because my moral comparative literature prof at the Sorbonne was not very much surprised when he asked me, what was that young doctor like you doing here? I said what I thought there was much in literature, and whatever else went with it, that would serve me to be a psychiatrist. The psychiatry thing came at the end of these few years, and I was entering in Charlottesville, Escaros, old hospital, in my chief of service of Henri Barrique, together with Darelene from Holland, where I tried to find out whether you could give verbal coupling to cats and produce catatonia in them. Very.
Did they get catatonic?
Yes. Anyway.
I'll get it straight.
So I spent 2.5 years there, and then I was going at the Sorbonne at the same time. I eventually got my licences lettres, which was the equivalent of the master's awards degree. Now, in between what was happening,
We went to a party at Marie Bonaparte's house.
Ah, yes. there was a meeting of the International Psychoanalytic Association, and they asked a couple of us who were interns at psychiatry to go to it. And this is how the invitation came to go to Marie Bonaparte's house. It was a remarkable mansion, I must say. You know, and It was kind of interesting to be listening to her and all of the work that she was doing with Edgar, on Edgar Allan Poe. Now, in between, I mean, when I came to about 39, I was married for the first time. I'm delighted to see my children, and they are our own spouses, so to say, spice, here tonight. And so, and my first wife was at the Sorbonne. She became a professor, and she taught French here, someplace in the suburbs. Bronxville. Yeah. And, well, we had our first child, to begin with. Yes, you're the first one.
Children, maybe you can stand up and we can introduce you. Bella and Lee are just children.
A pre-war and a post-war one.
Does that get us to the United States? Post-war gets us to the United
Yes.
States, right? So I'm going to give you a bit of a rest, and we'll play this video
Good.
about when you... I got that. You sort of hinted that to me when we spoke on the phone. So, these are the years when he's in the United States. So we'll play this.
Also, Ruth Moulton and Lou Gilbert were there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you met them in residency.
From there, I moved on to Rockland, was known then as Rockland State Hospital. I think now the Rockland Psychiatric Center. There, well, at PI, I met Silvano Riepi.
Oh, you met him?
Who was doing neuropathology at the time. And then when I went to Rockland, I met, well, a few sort of influential people as far as I'm concerned. One of them was Jerry Chanowski, who became eventually one of our graduates or faculty. The other one was Alex Kaplan, who became president of the American Psychoanalytic Association, having moved to St. Louis. And then there was Leon Gundelson, and who was already at the White Institute. Now, to move on from there, well, came 1941-42, and I tried to enlist in the Army. And they told me, you know, you're a doctor, and doctors have to be officers, and you're not a citizen. I said, well, okay, I'll wait and see what happens. 6 months later, I get a letter from the War Department telling me, you are a citizen of a co-belligerent country, Greece having been, of course, in the war in 1940. So therefore, you can apply and become an officer. So this is how, in September 1942, I was sent to, we are first, I think it was in Texas, San Antonio, Texas, where I started doing, you know, examinations, you know, people, inductees, so on, screening them essentially, both generally but particularly psychiatrically. And from there, a few months later, they sent me to Oklahoma, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and where there was a station hospital. I had a psychiatry department run by Lester Burrow, who was from, let's say, from Indiana, I think, originally. And so I stayed there as I was a ward officer in psychiatry. Then came the fall of by then it was 1941, 42. And the army, in its mysterious way, would not send you to Europe. They sent you to the Pacific. So my French served me well in New Caledonia in order to get my fellow, whatever people, army people, to get some eggs and steak from the local colonists, and so on. That was about it. I stayed in the South Pacific with the 31st Station Hospital, which was kind of outgrowth of the University of Minnesota hospitals. I think their main unit went to North Africa, but the others had been sent to California, and from there to the South Pacific as the 31st Station Hospital, commanded by a man, Corin P. Humans, who was from Miami, Florida. And all of these people were Vikings, or whatever you would call them, from Minnesota. But anyway, for whatever reason, they adopted me, and they called me Port Said Gopher. and I've observed the 40th anniversary of that station hospital a few years ago in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And I still have one of the people from internal medicine who was there, and I think I'm the last with him. So there are survivors of that hospital. Came back to the States, 31st of December 1945.
Happy New Year.
Gloriously drunk in Seattle, having to adopt the name of a naval ensign, I think, in order to put for the club there that they had. And then I arrived here just about a few days before or after my official birthday. I went back to Rockland State for a while, you know, as one of the attendings. Stayed there for a few months. Then I started some private practice in the city, and I went to the Veterans Administration Clinic and stayed with them also for a while. But both Silvano Rieti and Jerry Chernovsky were there at the time. Well, you know, it getting to the point that I thought, well, I should have some psychoanalytic training. Because by then, you know, having read Freud one way or another, and the then current analysts, you know, I really feel terribly compassionate with current students. Yeah. Because in my days, you read Freud and maybe 2 or 3 other people, and that was about it. What people have to read today is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I have gotten myself a bit wary of this when I was teaching, you know, things that have to do with the literature and have to assign various kinds of reading, etc., which were already done. But anyway, what happened is that I went to applied to the New York Psychoanalytic Institute because everybody was doing that at the time. Columbia was a bit too difficult. I already had one child and I was going to have another.
So you're saying then that in some way Columbia Psychoanalytic was more rigorous, required more involvement than New York Psychoanalytic?
At the time, yes. I had 3 interviews, Sarah Burnett, Marion Chris, and Rudy Lowenstein. Okay. Yeah. Whom I had met in Paris during a Congress of the International Psychoanalytic Association, very briefly. Of course, he didn't remember me. I remembered him. Yeah. And God, things are funny. I think one place where I met him was at Marie Bonaparte's house. She had a party during that particular Congress, whatever it was, in the International Psychoanalytic, and I never knew at the time that They were supposed to be intimate, etc., etc. Anyway, I was accepted in the New York Psychoanalytic Institute. I was supposed to start, they had my name on the list of people in my class.
Yeah.
And they told me, no, you cannot start because you don't have an analyst to give you permission to start.
See.
And I thought, oh my God, what's going on? And we're going to find you an analyst.
I see.
So I started talking about Leon Goldenson. And Leon Goldenson said, I already had told Chair Janowski, but don't you apply to the White Institute because he didn't know it. And he did. So he was 1 year ahead of me here. Leon said, why don't you apply to the White Institute? And I thought, well, am I doing a rebelling year or something like this? But it makes sense. I started reading some of the things from people thinking interpersonal.
Was that the first time that you were starting to get exposed to some of the interpersonal literature?
Yeah.
You hadn't read Sullivan before?
No. No, and Sullivan had not appeared yet.
He hadn't?
Well, Conceptions came out just a year or two later.
Okay.
So I applied to the White Institute. Thereby was another tale because Leon Goldenson called Clara Thompson, made an appointment for me. And I ran to her place, which was East 83rd Street, which she happened to have a penthouse, only to be told by the doorman, here, Dr. Thompson's office is not here, it's in the corridor. So I could run, and I ran from the thing. And I went there, I remember it was a Tuesday noon. Virginia Newton was the registrar and Clara's secretary. He says, may I help you? And I said, yes, I have an appointment with Dr. Thompson. He said, you do? Goes and checks with Clara, comes back, says, your appointment was for yesterday. So, but she's going to see you anyway. So Clara saw me. For a few minutes or something like that. Eventually said, well, I knew something about you anyway. I had another interview with Janet Rioch and one of Tauber.
And did Clara make any mention of your being a day late, or?
No, not particularly.
Didn't say anything.
I was told this by Virginia Newton, her secretary, that she's going to see you anyway. Well, I did tell her eventually, I think that I'm here on the false pretenses. She said, well, look, don't worry. I knew something as to who you were, etc., and about your applying. This was in 1948, and Ralph Crowley, who was one of the few then training analysts, had some open hours.
Can you say who the others were then, besides Ralph
The
Crowley?
analysts?
Yes.
Well, certainly Janet Rioch was there, Clara Thompson, Ed Tauber, Meyer Maskin, let me see who else. I think it may be that I think Harry Bone was already a training analyst then. But there were few.
I see.
And some of these people had just come back from the Army or the Navy. Crowley had been Navy. So I went to see him on April 1st, 1948.
Auspicious?
Yes.
Inauspicious?
Auspicious, and so on. And he's told me, yes, he's had some time, so. And I started about a week later.
Very different than your experience at New York Psychoanalytic.
Oh yes, definitely different. Yeah, and even the interviews were different.
How so?
Well, Sarah Burnett said to me, I think that you're not the kind of man who goes and takes his friends by the buttonhole and tells them all that he knows or says or thinks and so on, which I think was true. I was a very hesitant kind of a guy, I think, and not very open to reveal things and so on. It seems to me that and I saw these people, I knew something of them. I think that essentially it seemed to me that they wanted to find out what kind of an interest I had, you know, in psychoanalysis, and how much did I hear about it or know about it, etc. In a way that was partly an intellectual kind of a concern, and the rest a concern with whether I had a personality that would allow me to be taught and to be exposed to basic psychoanalytic theory and follow through with that.
Yes.
And this is where I started feeling funny, because it seemed to me that it was a kind of orthodox thing, you know, that you had to pursue, you had to be able to sort of, I was going to say, bow to the particular thing that would be taught.
I see.
My interview, besides with Clara, who just didn't ask terribly much, the geriatry, you know, I had a most peculiar experience, because I went to her about a year or two later for supervision. And I remember telling Jerry Janowski, when did she move her office? He says, what do you mean move her office? She'd been there, it was across the Museum of Modern Art, you know, for a long time on 54th Street.
Yeah.
He said, she'd been there for years. I said, oh no. And you know what accounted for this? My experience with Janetry is that she was over there at the end of the room and I was way here. I went back to see her on supervision and it was, you know, fairly close. So obviously I was responding to something about her. She was a lady, and you know, not forbidding, but you know, quite I would say a bit old-fashioned in her way. But she wanted to find out from me what my interests are and how do I pursue them. She asked me, for instance, about politics. I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm going to get slayed here. So I told her, well, you know, I'm interested. I'm a member of the Progressive Citizens of America, which at the time was something that eventually got on McCarthy's list, you know, and so on. And I wonder, what did she want this? And really, I think what she wanted is to know if I really believe in something, do I do something about it? Ed Tarver was sort of, you know, more open and kind of funny. His interview, eventually you found out they said something about this man likes people genuinely. And he just wanted to know, well, why was I applied to the White Institute, what did I know about it? And I sort of indicated a little that I didn't know, and that it seemed to me to suit better my inclinations than something that would be particularly restrictive, shall we say, or constrictive. And this is how I got started.
And so this was, you were in the second or third beginning class? What was it?
Speaking of classes, I think the first class that officially graduated, because there were people like, well, Eisner, Moulton, and a few others who had, Foster, had graduated before, Charlie Horton, in separate classes. But the Institute was first chartered in '43, and the first class that graduated as a class with having a dinner, you know, graduation and so on, was the one preceding me.
I see.
Which turned out to be 1950 so-called class.
I see.
And that class had in it, well, was a guy named Dave Gross, with whom I had joint supervision with Stauber at some point, Joe Miller, and then they had Woody English, and well, they also had Jerry Chanowski, and Ray Sobel, and Albrecht.
I see.
The ones surviving now from that class are Britt and Sobel. Sobel happens to have the same birthday as I do, except 3 years later, so I phoned him the other day. wish him happy birthday.
And we should just make a note of the fact that it was just your birthday, as you said the other day, and you turned 93?
Yeah.
93. Okay.
So that was the class that I think they had dinner at Class Pigalle on Madison Avenue. No longer extant, you know. My class was a very large class. I think there were 13 to 16 people. Because of what? Because people had come back from the wars, you know, and they went through it. But we didn't, those years we didn't go by class, you know, cohort kind of group.
I see.
So it so happens that at my graduation, which was at the Barbizon Hotel for Women, Otto Kleinberg was giving a speech about the Weimar Republic. I don't think we listened to him, we were too damn excited. But I knew some of the people in my class. There was one person whom I had never heard of, Natalie Shamus.
Is that right?
I had never heard of, seen her, anything, because I was not in the same classes.
And who else was in your graduating class?
Greenberg was in it, Jack Schimmel was in it, Milton Mason, and Lillian Kaplan, Ed Simon, and Joe Geller. He's south now, someplace.
Yeah.
And trying to call who else was it. But anyway, Irvin Sanoff. I think he's out in Roseland. He has sort of broken away, you know. He used to be president of the White Society 1 year, but shortly after that he sort of dropped out from the society. I mean, a number of people have done this.
Yeah.
And but that was what is known as a class of 51.
I see. So it was the second official class in that respect.
That's right.
Okay. And so in your training, who were you exposed to who was particularly influential? Of course, you mentioned Ralph Crowley was your training analyst.
Yeah. Well, I think that, but for one thing, the way that they had classes then, some of us were too far ahead in our work in psychiatry, for instance. I think that even the psychologists who we had then were sort of ahead of what was being taught in a kind of elementary way.
I see.
But we did have various, exposure to various people, both within the Institute and outside of it. But my first supervision was with Janet Riel.
Okay.
And I think that anything that I know about Sullivan, I learned it by osmosis from her. Because I think she was really very, about as good a representative of interpersonal theory in action as you could think of. I was in supervision with her, both individual and then eventually in duo, which we used to do that, with Bir Schaffner. I was with Ralph Crowley in analysis. About 2.5, 3 years later, he said, we've grown too comfortable together, and besides, I think you should have a woman. So he sent me to Clara.
Okay.
And I had been in supervision with Clara before, anyway. Tauber was a very interesting man, to work with, he had not come out yet with the exploration of the data personally and so on, but he was working along those lines, and I think that he was quite representative of some of Fromm's inclinations in psychoanalysis. And I had him also in duo with, at some point, with Dave Gross, who was in the class before me. Edgar, a little bit of iconoclast, you know.
Yes.
He had a remarkable sense of humor, sometimes was biting. He used to call my fellow supervisor Ehrenberg Gross, you know. So, but he, Clara, as a supervisor, was, well, the way that Ed Levenson has described her, it's like the Matterhorn.
Yes, she's just there.
She lets you find out for yourself. But she would raise questions.
But there must be something more than just being there. There's a particular way in which she was there.
She was, I wouldn't say that she was openly nurturing, but she was essentially, you know, trying to educe something from you to find out, and to sort of get you, why is it that you don't work with your feelings in analysis? If you feel something, why do you hide it? I suppose the Ferencian influence was there, not getting away from her, and this is pretty much the way that she was doing things. She was, you know, I told her once, you know, I don't think that you care about me. You care to have me be free from obstacles in doing analysis. And a few years later, I thought to myself, why did I define these two as being two different things? You know, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I also told her once that I thought she was cold, and she said to me, detached maybe, cold never. Anyway, so, I mean, these were people who had different styles.
Yes.
Eventually, not for credit, but you know, just to have the thing, I went back to Kwawer for supervision, and this was interesting because he knew a lot about me, you know, and so he would sort of point these things out or raise questions about this, about that, something else. My other supervisors were Frida from Reichman and Eric Fromm.
Oh, well, so please tell me.
Frida from Reichman.
Just thought he'd
We used to go to Baltimore to see, you know, Chestnut Lodge. Or
how often did you go down?
About, let me see, how often was that? You drive that. I think we did it every 2 weeks, something like that, for a while.
And would you have an extended hour, or?
No, it was an hour, and they used to log this old kind of recorder, you know. I had a patient who was a very well-known and successful actress. And I remember, you know, having the thing around with, played for Frida. And Frida would say to me, how come you sound so stilted? You're not that way. Or would say, you know, this patient is pulling your leg. Or would say something to me, was being a doctor in your family something very important? No, I didn't want to tell her, but you know, actually, my family thought of doctors after the birds. They changed from 1 year to another, etc. But anyway, she would raise questions. I would get the feeling, what has it got to do with my patient? And it's only weeks later, I say, oh my God, she must be responding to this or that or something like that. The patient was not schizophrenic by any means, although once Uncle Rorschach said that there were islands of schizophrenia in it and so on. She was much more of a borderline person, what we would call today. And with Eric Fromm, it was a very thing. I used to see him here whenever he would come up, and he had a place up Riverside Drive, was it? Well, I also presented in one of his seminars, and I had a dream about him. Oh, yes. And he wanted to hear the dream, of course, the seminar, and so on. In the dream, I was actually going from one room to another, and one of them was my first analyst, Crowley. And I was trying to find out something from him regarding Fromm, something. Then I passed by and I see Fromm lying on his back like that, and he said to me, was I being ridiculous something or was I having fun? I said, you're having fun. He says, good. And he did, you know, I didn't experience with Fromm this allegedly highly direct thing, you know. I presented a paper once called Tender Hearts and Martinets, varieties of countertransference. Presumably the hearts, tender hearts was Salomon, and the martinet was Fromm. But I don't think he ever told me what to do. But one day he said to me, look, you know, this is a patient who was also a woman and could get terribly angry with practically everybody. And get mean in the process. And Eric Fromm said to me, why don't you tell her, look, both you and I know that you're a bitch. Now what can we do about it? I said, but Dr. Fromm, I kind of said, he said, I know, but just imagine. It's this kind of thing, you know. He makes you feel, if you believe something, why is it that you don't convey it more directly and ask, see what would happen if, etc. So that, and I don't think that, I mean, I don't think any of these people were terribly critical of my work for whatever reason, you know, and so.
I was interested in the things that were interfering with your being able to use yourself more productively.
Very definitely.
And so, you never did meet Sullivan then, is that correct?
No. I heard 2 of his lectures at the New York Academy of Medicine.
You saw him
Yes,
speak?
ultimately, yeah.
So,
But I never had any direct contact with him, supervision. You know, I mean, this was 48, 49,
right.
and he died in 49, actually early in Paris. But I heard those 2 lectures, and one of them, at least one of them, is in an issue of Psychiatry, the then Yellow Journal,
Right.
has to do with anxiety, essentially. And this is kind of a thing that
It's not the data of Psychiatry, is it? Not the one that came out in the Pioneers book, the data of Psychiatry?
No.
Not that one?
No, that was not the book. It was something about anxiety. You know, he had this kind of drawings, the black thing going one way or another. You know, but I don't know, I mean, as I said, what I got from about Sullivan, I got it mainly from Janet Riot. And
But since, you know, we don't really get much.
Thank you. Just especially. Turn it off. If you can turn off the button, turn that light off. Milt, you have anything you want to correct or change? I'll open this up to Mary and Clara. Anything you would like to add or change from that before we ask people to tell us about you?